Thanks, Brooklyn. Whether it be in the classroom, doing joint projects, or on the dance team, how do you focus on creativity and brainstorming to come up with new and fresh ideas?
For dance team, it's a little different than all the other sports. You do have to be like a lot more creative with what we're doing for like halftime performances or recitals or competitions and stuff like that. But a lot of the time, I like find myself just doing the same thing of like what our team is good at, or like what we're comfortable with, which is really hard. Like I need to know that we need to come together. So something I do is just like ask my teammates, which they were both saying like I need to know that I'm not always like the right one to come up with what we're going to be doing. So we all come from like different backgrounds and different trainings, so we all have something different we can bring to the table. So just asking around the teammates like, hey, what do you think would be good here? And just using everyone else's assets to like come together and brainstorm. And that goes for like in the classroom as well, just not thinking like what you're doing is the best and right way, but like asking your teammates, asking your friends and your peers like what we can all do, what we can all contribute to make it the best. So
I love that. Perfect. Thank you. Well, and we talk about creativity and development session, and some people are like, why are we talking about creativity when we're talking about developing strong teams? But it's really important as we're coming up with solutions and finding, coming up with new ideas. So we're going to go back to the Mentimeter, and we're going to ask the crowd. So creativity is not a skill that everyone has, but it can be learned. I will tell you, I'm not creative at all. How would you rate your creativity? Oh, we got a couple people down with me that are not very creative. I appreciate that some of you are down there with me. And 11 of you said it depends on the situation, probably what you're working on, what's going on. And then another group of you, about 5 of you, say you're extremely creative. Also, when we talk about teams, negotiation is really important. How we come up with, win-win situations, how we compromise, how we come together. So when we think about negotiations, when you're working with others, often we have to negotiate to come up with the best solutions for both sides. So I'm going to ask you all, how do you negotiate with others? Brooklyn, we're going to start with you.
I kind of like to say my point of what I think is best. Then you have to hear out what everyone else has to say, even though it might not be like what you want to hear. But I think that's like negotiating and then coming to like find the common ground, common goal of what the organization, the club, the sport needs, and then just like coming from there. So.
Well, I don't negotiate. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I mean, I think when you look at it from, and again, I'm sorry, I live in my world, so athletes in the room, you negotiate with me all the time. I want to practice, I want to play, I want to do those things. So in my world, negotiation, one, it's a daily occurrence. It's tough because ultimately, like from my perspective, when I have to pull the reins back on sometimes on athletes that want to play when they shouldn't be playing or want to push themselves beyond their limits. But it's a give and take, and Brooklyn said it a little bit, and I think it's, when you look at the negotiation, when you look at the give and take of it, I think both parties have to give a little bit. Of course, that's the definition of negotiation. But I think both parties also have to feel they gain something from the negotiation. And ultimately you want to feel that both parties are the winner in the situation. So from my perspective, I think negotiation, one, is a daily occurrence. I think you negotiate with yourself, as strange as that sounds, getting up out of bed every single morning. Are you going to get up for your 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock class? You negotiate subconsciously if you are with the alarm clock. But I mean, in a world of athletics, in a world of college, I think, again, I'm going to refer it back, like you might not feel like you're a great negotiator now, and it might seem like a very trivial thing. But as you develop those skills, you'll come out on top, whether you feel like you win or lose the negotiation. I think you gain those skills, you gain those ideologies, and you gain a lot of confidence in yourself through those negotiations. So it can be, again, negotiating, getting up in the morning, or it can be negotiating for a big deal for a job. So every little thought, every little process throughout your day might be a little bit of a negotiation.
Probably a little contrarian with these two. And not that I disagree with anything they've said, but I think the best negotiation is often when both parties feel like they've left something, right? Left something on the table. I spent 16 years as a commodities trader. That is the art of, that is, you negotiate every day. And I will say it's as much of an art as a skill. Perhaps more of an art, requires a lot of experience, but there's just some rules of the trade. One of the mantras of negotiating is they say the person who speaks first, and what they really mean by that is the person who gives the first bid is the one that's going to lose. I don't know if I agree with that. I will say that the person that talks the most is the one who's going to have the least advantage. So when you're talking to Doc about wanting to play, you try to get him to talk more than what you're talking about. Make sure you've done a lot of research, and you just keep asking him questions, and you'll eventually find an opening to where you can leverage your position. So try to get them to talk more. Do your research. I mean, I'm telling you, this works.
I know, everyone's like taking notes.
Talk more. Get the other person to talk more. Do your research. Be willing to walk away. That's a real key to negotiation. A lot of people think you always have to find the happy ground. If you've got a position you're passionate about, you've got to be willing to walk away. And yeah, stick to your guns. Again, you can always come back and revisit the negotiation, but be willing to walk away. So.
Yeah, I love all those answers. And I will also say, when you go out for your jobs, please, please, please make sure you're negotiating. I promise you, every HR person will hate me saying this, they do not give you the best offer on the first offer. So please negotiate. You can do it in a very kind way, but it's very important. And even if they can't give you more money, they can give you more vacation, they can pay for your association fees, something like that. And so it's really important, especially ladies in the room, coming from experience, men will negotiate 7 out of 10 times. And women will negotiate about 3 out of 10 times. So advocate for yourself, negotiate, ask for what you want, do the research, figure out what makes sense, but make sure you're asking for what you deserve. Persuasion can be an important skill to help people buy into an idea or strategy. How do you use your persuasion in your work?
Okay, so I guess I look at persuasion kind of in an interesting manner, because some people might look at persuasion and look at it kind of as like a negative thing, a manipulation, as opposed to a persuasion. So I look at persuasion more as an education. So it is my job to educate, again, I live in my world of athletics, it's my job to educate the athlete of outcomes, of our goals, our timelines, and all those things. Now, do they always go that way? No. And does the athlete persuade me sometimes to allow them to go a little faster or me a little slower? But I think really when it comes down to the root of persuasion, I think education, and I think we've all touched upon that today, I think education plays a major role in any decision that you make. The more educated you are, the easier it is to persuade someone else, especially if you can prove your point with information that supports that. So again, and you touched upon it earlier, when you're talking to your physician, ask the questions. Yeah, you might not have the answers, but simply asking the question shows that you're trying to educate yourself in that manner, and that gives you so much more power in the ability to persuade a physician, myself, me, you, and so on when we look at that. And you can relate those skills into the business world. You can relate those skills with your parents. You can relate those skills with a lot of different things. My 11-year-old daughter tries to persuade me all the time. Doesn't mean she wins, but she makes a very valid argument sometimes because she goes and spends 5 minutes to try and Google something or look something up. But what I'm saying is ultimately the education that will help you in the ability to persuade. Okay? Don't look at it though as you're manipulating, because ultimately manipulating has a negative connotation, right? But to persuade, you're educating, you're putting yourself out there, you're educating the individual, you're providing information that they might not have had, okay? And ultimately, that is only going to help you in the end when you look at persuasion and finding that goal that you want.
So Brooklyn, being a student athlete requires you to juggle a lot. And reasoning allows you to use logic to remove emotion from decisions. So how do you use reasoning to make decisions?
Yeah, I think reasoning is something that I really struggle with. Like, I'm the kind of person that will just not have reasoning at all and say yes to everything. Like, hey, can you do this? Can you sign up for this? Can you teach this dance and do this? And I just say yes. I don't really use reasoning a lot, which is something I think a lot of student athletes can agree with. Like, they also just feel like we have a lot on our plate and we just don't want to upset anybody, so we just don't really use reasoning at all. But something that I found to like help work on that is just like really figure out what my priorities are, not necessarily like overall like for the whole year, but maybe for this week. Like my priorities this week are going to be to get this assignment done, to go to practice and put all my effort into practice, and then also like I need to make sure I'm balancing like my friendships, my relationships, and things like that. So it's something that I really like try to use reasoning for, is just like figuring out what my priorities are, not only for like overall, but for the week, for the month, for my goals and things like that. So
I love that. And I will say you're not alone. We have all been in that chair, and even still, you know, as grown-ups, we all still struggle with that. And, you know, I think advocating for yourself, you all are learning this as you're going through your journey, is, you know, advocating for what you need and advocating for yourself and speaking up when you need time to do classwork and when you need time to just breathe and things like that. So good. I'm glad you're working on it. I love it. All right. So Doug, at work and just in daily life, we're constantly having to think big and come up with new ideas. Lateral thinking is a way to view problems in creative new ways. How do you think big?
I'm not a lateral thinker.
Okay.
I'm pretty linear. I wish I had more of that lateral thinking capability and just being able to come up with that real seismic idea, that great idea. I'm a bit more of an incrementalist. If you guys do strength finders, if you haven't done that, it's always good to do a little profile, because being self-aware is a really powerful tool. Restorative is my number one, which would reinforce the incremental, that being able to identify or evaluate existing processes that are in place and finding ways to make incremental improvements to it. That's more my style, and I'm very good about how we can execute getting from A to B to C to D. And,
Gotcha.
And being able to do that with multiple processes. That's a little more how I think big and try to migrate our organization forward.
Okay, great. Yep. Yeah, I'm not a big thinker either. And so I just bring in a friend to do it for me. I'm not creative,
Yeah.
so I phone a friend. Okay, so last question I'm going to ask the whole panel. When we think about this session on how we work together, at the core it's building strong relationships. How do you intentionally work on building relationships with your peers, other leaders, those around you? So, Brooklyn, you want to start?
yeah, I think relationships, especially in college, are like very important. You need to find like your group of people to surround yourself with, because we're all going through like so much during these 4 or 5 years that you're here. So just really surrounding yourself with people that can help build you up. And my mom always said, like, you want to surround yourself with the 5 people that you want to be like. So surrounding yourself with those people that are going to help improve you and help improve your relationships. Spending time with people, and I know like I don't want to be that person because I am that kind of person, but like without your phone, without like distraction, and just actually like have found myself, especially at Benedictine, like having really like deep and thorough conversations with people, which is something that has really strengthened my relationships with my friends and my teammates and my peers. So just really like finding a group of people, and like also going to like find friends that aren't in your silos like we were talking earlier, and just going to get to know everyone and just really like building yourself up and establishing those. So.
I love it.
I think I kind of got a little stumped. That was really good with that.
Thank you.
Surrounding yourself. I mean, I 100% agree. Like, I think you need to surround yourself with amazing people. I don't think anyone rises to low expectations. So I think if you surround yourself with highly motivated individuals, intelligent individuals, I mean, we all have that friend that you just like to hang around because they're fun, right? But you do want somebody to push you. And when we're young, it's our parents, okay? When we enter in high school, it's our best friends. When we're in college, it becomes our lifelong friends. So I think I am 100% on board with you. You surround yourself with people that push you and drive you, and that's not something that should ever stop. Like if you surround yourself and those people will fade away, unfortunately. Like you will have, I think the statistics is you'll only have 1 or 2 true best friends your entire life. I'm lucky I currently still have those 2 best friends right now, but like that's what it is. And I think the other thing I would piggyback with that is honesty. Like I think you need to be honest. I think a lot of times the hardest things that you can do to develop relationships is to put yourself out there and be honest about that. And I think that definitely solidifies the relationship. I definitely think it forges those relationships for the long term. And then when times are tough, those people will be there because you've shown that you've given that emotional support and that emotional strength that you've leaned on them with. So when you're developing relationships, I think that's key.
I love that.
Pretty powerful. I'm not sure I have much to add. It was like, humans are hardwired. We're hardwired for human connection, not connection from your phone, not social media. And I know it's easy for a 57-year-old to say because I didn't grow up with it like you guys did. And that's, but the human connection, doing exactly what these guys talked about, being able to show interest in one another is how I get my energy from being around people. If you're an extrovert, that's pretty much the definition, is that you just get your energy from being around other people. But being able to forge a connection is different than just being able to interact, right? I mean, it's being able to show interest in that person. That's the real power, I think, about how you forge a relationship, is being able to say, I'm more interested in learning about you than you should be about me. But hopefully that reciprocity steps in, because I do want some people to care about me. But I do think that and she said it beautifully, which is the connection is leave your phone off. It's really about creating that personal connection. There's just a lot of power with that, and that's a real healthy relationship that everybody wants to forge. 5 is great. 20 is better. Now you'll have 2 to 5 meaningful, deep, best friend relationships. Being able to learn from one another is, there's real power in that, in being able to tap into a diverse group and not just that same 5.
Yeah. Yeah, I love all those answers. And what I really love is you all are pulling through so many topics that we've talked about in the previous 3 sessions. And so I encourage everybody, if you haven't checked out the previous sessions, you can find them on the NAIA's website. You can also find it on the NAIA's YouTube channel. But when we talk about acceptance and belonging and meeting people that are different than us and the communication skills, I love you talking about honesty. We talk a lot about the importance of kindness and not being Midwest nice, not telling someone, oh my gosh, you look so great. And then later they look at themselves in the mirror and they're like, why didn't they tell me the truth? Like, I could have changed. But it's so important for us to have those deep relationships. So check out those episodes, and we look forward to the next session that we're going to be recording, which is efficient. So how do we get things done? And with your busy schedules, you all are learning such important skills that are going to really translate to the future. So thank you everyone for being here, and thank you all for sharing today.
Pleasure. Thank you.